I'm so honored to have one of my good friends with us. In fact, you probably heard her podcast episode drop on Tuesday. Yes, that's right. It's Vanessa Levin with Pre-K Pages. She has a bachelor degree in education and has spent almost all of her 20 years in education in pre-kindergarten. She created her huge blog, Pre-K Pages, and grew her following to over 1 million people. She's spoken at over 100 conferences, and most importantly, she just wrote a brand new book called Teach Smarter. Yes, I got one of the first copies. It's over here. I can't wait to dive into it. It just showed up on the doorstep yesterday. We're so excited to hear from her. She's going to help us know how to teach smarter. 3 early literacy mistakes to avoid. And with that, my friends, let's show it up over here with our emoji paddles. Give it up for our girl, Vanessa Levin. Welcome to our summit.
I titled this little session, 3 early literacy mistakes to avoid. Not that you make any mistakes. We never make mistakes as teachers, do we? No, I do. But I know that teachers are very mindful of what they do, and they want to make sure they're doing their best for their children every single day. And so I knew that would be the title for this session. So I spent a little bit about me. I spent more than 20 years in the classroom, and for the last 11 years, I've trained thousands of early childhood professionals just like you. And along the way, I created this blog, this thing, Pre-K Pages. It's become something that has grown into its own thing. If you heard the podcast, you probably heard that already. And one of the things I got known for was my stance, my really strong stance on early literacy instruction in the early childhood classroom, which ultimately led me to write this book with Wiley, the Josie Bass division of Wiley. And you can find it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million. And enough about me. I want to talk about you now, because that's what we're really here to do. We're here to celebrate you and to help you be the very best you can be. Joy does so much for you all out there, and I just love to give back. So here we go. I want to ask you some questions. For those of you that have been, as we say in Texas, to this rodeo before, does it feel like it's getting a little more difficult each year to teach your kids the letters of the alphabet? So some of you have been to this rodeo before, so let me know in the chat box. And second question, does it seem impossible to get any like teaching types of work done because your kids have non-existent attention spans? I know none of you could possibly relate to that. And do you just wish that there was a foolproof formula that you could follow that would help your kids learn the letters of the alphabet? Yeah, I'm pretty sure if I could see all your faces right now, you'd be raising your hands. And you know what? There is no shame in feeling one or all 3 of these things. It's a judgment-free zone. So if any of those 3 resonated with you, go ahead and type that number into the chat box. You can type a 1, 2, or 3, or multiple numbers if you want to. Go for it. And while you do that, I'm going to flip over to the next slide. And I know you want to get right to it. So let's get to mistake number 1. This is a mistake to avoid, and that is ignoring the precursors. The precursor is something that comes before. So if we're talking about the alphabet, did you know that there is something that comes before kids learn the alphabet? There's something that they have to know before, right? And often it's so easy to just think, well, where do I start when teaching preschool? Alphabet, numbers, colors, and shapes. It makes perfect sense to us as adults, but there are actually some precursors when it comes to learning the letters of the alphabet. I'm going to help you avoid these pitfalls. So visual discrimination is what it's all about. This is the ability for children to distinguish the difference between objects or symbols by sight, just by looking at them, right? It is a precursor to learning the letters, or naming and identifying the letters of the alphabet. And before they can ever begin to do that, before they can begin to name and identify those letters, they have to have these well-developed skills, right? And if you've ever felt like it's getting more difficult, remember those questions I just asked you? If it's getting more difficult to teach your students the letters of the alphabet, that's because it really is. Because with the increased use of technology at home and the fewer opportunities that children have to actually touch, feel, and interact with real objects, they're coming to school without well-developed visual discrimination skills. So you're not going crazy. How's that for an affirmation? I could just use someone to call me every day and just say that. So what are some things you can do, right? What can you do about this visual discrimination thing? It's not just woe is me. There are things you can do because you can do hard things, right? So the way we go about teaching this skill is very important, right? The more that they touch, feel, and manipulate actual things, in this case, magnetic letters, right? The more they will be likely to retain the shape and then begin to identify. And so here on the screen we have, and there is a handout too, by the way. Joy will make sure that you get your hands on that so that you don't have to spend your hours Googling, because you have way better things to do than that. But the children are just looking at letters in this instance. That's a cookie tray, by the way, cookie sheet, you know, it's magnetic. And they just are visually discriminating. They're looking at, that's a fancy word for looking at. They're looking at the letters and seeing which ones have holes and which ones don't. And of course, this would be an activity you would do with a small group of kids. And I would say this activity would be good for children 3.5 all the way up to 5 or older if they haven't got those visual discrimination skills in place. And so they are looking at letters, and I usually hold them up to my eye, and if you can see me through the hole, that means there's a hole. And then these don't have holes. And all they're doing is sorting them onto the tray, right? So easy, easy peasy, as they like to say. And here, when your kids get a little more advanced with these visual discrimination skills, you can move on to their name, because nothing is more important to a child than his or her own name, right? Have you ever had kids go around your classroom or your space and go, that's my letter, that's so-and-so's letter? They have a real connection to those letters in their name, so let's use it to our advantage, right? And so let's use those names of the children in your classroom. They're interested in their name and their friends' names. And so in this one, we're just looking at a name card. And again, another cookie sheet. I'm all about the dollar store here. And I give them a little name card with their name written on it. They have to have the name card when they're doing these types of activities, because recalling their name that they've seen in print and then remembering the shapes of those letters, that's a much more difficult skill. So they need that name card in front of them with the letters right on there. And this was just a trusty old Sharpie that I had, just wrote on a piece of paper. And each kid would get a little cookie tray. This would be, again, something you're going to do with a group of kids. And again, probably 3.5 all the way up to where they don't yet recognize or visually discriminate those letters. So it doesn't really matter how old they are, it's just if they have the skill or not. And now they're just going to pull out magnetic letters and sort them on that magnetic cookie sheet, right? Super, super, super easy and fun. And then another way you can do this is by looking at curvy and straight lines. That is so fun because, again, they're touching, feeling, manipulating. It's a great opportunity to say, does this one have straight lines or curvy lines? Let's look. It goes around like that. That's a curvy line. And this one has a straight line down like a soldier. That's what I always tell them. You can tell them whatever you want, but I always try to give them some kind of visual or memory device to go along with it, right? And let's look. This one has a straight line down like a soldier, and then it has a sideways line and a sideways line. I don't feel any curves. Do you? They get a big kick out of that. So there's lots of different ways to sort magnetic letters. The great thing about it is all you need is a set of magnetic letters and a cookie sheet, right? Those are things you can find really easily and get your hands on. And here's a really, really fun one. You may notice this one on Facebook. It went viral a few years ago. And this is just, we bury some magnetic letters in some kind of sensory bin, whatever filler you want. And then in the meantime, behind the scenes, right, I've taken the magnetic letters and I've put them on a dark piece of paper, construction paper, cheap construction paper, the cheaper the better in this case. And then I take that cookie sheet and I put each letter of the alphabet on top of the paper and I set it out in the sun. And can you guess what happens? Yes, that's right. The sun bleaches the paper around the letters. And when you take the letters off, you have a letter matching mat. And then I laminate that and tape it down to the cookie sheet just because we know how kids are, right? And then I bury the letters in the sensory bin and they dig for them and they find them and they take them out, they look at them and they have to match them to their homemade matching sheet. Now you don't need a cookie tray for this. I just like to use a cookie tray because the letters are magnetic. And every time they finish, like they get all the letters on their mat, they hold it up and they go, look, Mrs. Levin, and letter soup on the floor. So I started putting a cookie sheet behind it. So when they hold it up, they don't go on the floor. So yeah, that's one of my better ideas. Okay, so that brings us to mistake number 2. Let me just, there we go. And that is starting with A and ending with Z. So it makes perfect sense to us as adults, right? We think in a linear pattern. Okay, I'm going to teach preschool. What am I going to teach? I got to teach letters, numbers, colors, and shapes. Where do I start with the letters? Well, duh, A, right? That makes perfect sense. And it does make perfect sense to our adult brains. But the truth is that young children don't learn how to identify letters of the alphabet, starting with the letter A and ending with the letter Z. Teaching letters in order is no longer considered a best practice in emergent literacy. And its research has proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that letters can't be learned all in 26 days, 26 weeks, 26 hours, whatever it is. They're not learned in that linear fashion. In fact, it turns out that young children learn to identify letters at their own pace, just like they learn how to walk at different times, right? If you have your own children, if you have children in your care, you know that sometimes a baby starts to crawl at this number of months. Other babies don't start to crawl until a whole lot later. Then some of them start to walk and others don't start to walk until a whole lot later, right? They're all individual in the way that they grow and develop. And the very same thing is true about how they learn the alphabet. So let's say you took baby A and baby A was not walking. He was not interested. Not going to happen, right? Baby just wasn't ready. And you said to that baby, you have to get up and walk because today is week 3 of my sequence of learning how to walk. And it says that this is the week that baby learns how to walk. So get up and walk, baby, walk. That doesn't work, right? That would never work. And you would never do that. The very same is true with letters of the alphabet. We can't just say, this week is letter F, and everyone's going to learn the letter F, and we're going to learn all about the letter F, and we're going to have fish in the inflatable pool, and we're going to do all kinds of cool stuff with the letter F. We're going to paint with forks, and you've just got this awesome lesson plan. It's so fun. But what if some of the kids aren't ready for F? What if in fact they haven't got those visual discrimination skills yet? The F isn't going to do anything for them, right? So, you know, and also if you're out there thinking, I don't know about this, it's okay. If you've ever made this mistake before, it is not the end of the world at all. When we know better, we do better. That's what I like to tell people. It's as simple as that. And it is never, ever, ever, ever too late to make changes to what you are already doing. So that's mistake number 2. So then, Vanessa, the next question is, if we're not teaching a letter a week, how do we know which letters to teach? And if our kids are actually learning them. So here's the thing. Being a confident and skilled teacher requires a much deeper understanding of how young children learn. And that includes understanding what they know right now and understanding what they don't know, right? And the method that we use to find out what they know and don't know is called assessment. Well, that word's got some kind of bad connotations to it in the most recent years, but really, we can use this information that we gather for good and not evil, right? It's not just to collect it to collect it. You can actually collect data on your children that helps you become a better professional educator, right? Whoop, sorry about that. Don't know what I clicked there. But wait, before you run screaming from the room, hear me out, okay? It's going to be all right. You don't have to, and you don't have to sit there and spend hours assessing each child either. It can be very quick and simple. And in case you're wondering what in the world assessment has to do with teaching letters of the alphabet, let me break it down for you. You start by assessing each student on the letters of the alphabet, right? This is going to tell you what letters they know, and it's going to tell you what letters you need to teach, right? Now you take that information you gathered and use it to create small groups. So that answers the question of, well, if they all know different letters because they're already at different times, then I have to teach, let's say you have 10 kids. I have to teach 10 different lessons every day. I don't have time for that. And that's okay, because you can do things in small groups. And some of you may have enough children to qualify as a small group, right? You don't have to have 22 kids all at once. So let's say you pull a few students and you have a few kids who know maybe 5 or 7, maybe even 10 letters. That's great. Those kids would make a great group. And you have some kids who are like, letters? What are those? Right? Can we watch Paw Patrol? And that's another group. And you can focus on different things with those groups, because the group that knows like 5 to 7 letters, like they already have some visual discrimination skills, right? They already understand that letters have shapes and those shapes have names, and they've named some of those shapes correctly. That's like half the battle. Like that's going to be a whole different group. And your kids who are like, letters, what are letters? That's okay. You can do visual discrimination activities with them. And with your littles, kids that are younger than 3.5, you can have them matching things, right? Have you ever put like shapes, cut out shapes on the shelf in your block center? And then when the kids clean up, they have to match them. That's visual discrimination. Like that is something you can do with your littles where they're practicing visual discrimination skills. There's lots of puzzles and different things out there where they're matching shapes, right? Those are visual discrimination, and that's what you can do with your littles. And let's see. And in my book, I talk about the heart method. So where do we find ideas on how to then teach the letters to all these different kids who have different skills and are different, ready for different things? It sounds like chaos, right? So how do you know what to teach them? And that's where the heart method comes in. So I introduce you to this simple method to ensure that your lessons are as engaging as possible and will really help your kids become kindergarten ready. Oh, I gotta hurry up because we're almost out of time and you need to hear mistake number 3. So the heart method is hands-on. It has to be hands-on, whatever it is you're teaching. That means they have to touch, feel, and manipulate. It has to be enticing. It has to be more exciting than watching Paw Patrol. Tell that to my nephew. They have to have a personal connection to the letter or letters that they're learning. And that's where their names come into play a lot. They have to have a personal connection, whether it's a letter in their friend's name, it's a letter in your name, it's a letter in their dog's name. They have to have some kind of connection. They have to have repeated exposure over time. That means they have to see the letters and have attention paid to those letters all over the place, any time of the day. You know how when you're walking around and they say, hey, that's the letter like in Samantha's name, and that's a stop sign. That's a teachable moment. You can call attention to letters like that. And then the T is time for practice. So once you've done all this hard work and you've taught your little heart out, right? And you're just so excited and you're getting the parents excited about what they're learning about, you have to give the kids time to practice what they're learning. And that's kind of when they freely explore. Letters in the classroom, you've got some like magnetic letter stuff set out. You can have letters in the sensory bin. They have to be able to touch and feel them on their own terms. Okay, mistake number 3, really quick, missing motivation. So Mistake number 3 is missing the mark when it comes to motivation. And let me be very clear here. If your kids always want to play and they never want to do their work, have you ever had that? Or learn, then you're not teaching smarter, you're teaching harder, because for young children, play is their work. That is how they learn. And it's our job as professional educators to make learning fun and meaningful for our kids. And when our activities or lessons aren't fun or meaningful, then it becomes more difficult to get our kids to participate. And that's when we start to encounter resistance, which also ultimately results in less learning. So this part of the presentation, all of this is in your handout. These are amazing and fun activities that my kids in my own classroom have loved for many, many years. They're highly effective. They're that hook, they're that heart method, they're hands-on, they're enticing, they offer repeated exposure. You can give kids time for practice. There's a connection to these letters. And that's just their names written on some paper cut up. And then we took some clothespins and strung them up like laundry. I keep all the letters in an envelope. Keeps them busy for a long time. And I would say this would be 4 years and up. Name puzzles, these are awesome. Every kid has a name. We know they love their names. And this handy dandy little one is automatic. It fills in automatically. All you do is type your kids' names into a list, click one button, and it makes a puzzle for each kid. How cool is that? Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Here's another one where they take I'm big on clothespins, can you tell? And there's their little name at the top, and you write their letters on the clothespins and they can clip them. And this is great because they're practicing fine motor skills, right? Name cards, that's in your handout. I'll let you explore all those. A name wall is a must. You know how you have the alphabet on the wall? Put their little names and pictures underneath there too, to create a connection to them and the letters. They love looking at their pictures. The parking lot, super fun. Write letters on the tops of Matchbox cars. Ask your parents to donate them, steal them from your own kids. And then they can park the letters in the correct parking spot, if you will. This is great for the block center. In my school district, I worked for 20 years in the public schools, teaching primarily pre-kindergarten. And one year our school district told us that we were adopting a new curriculum. I can't stand when they use that term that way. And they gave us some samples to try out. And one of them was advocating for letter of the week. And this was many, many moons ago. And I started looking through it and thinking about my children that were in my classroom. Like, they were talking about peanut butter sandwiches and things, and my kids didn't eat that. They ate tortillas and rice. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to do all these things every week with things that don't mean anything to my kids. Like, this just totally won't work. And so I really, I had to do a lot of research, and I had to defend my stance to administration. And they ultimately went with another curriculum. I don't know if it was because of me or not, but I made it a mission because so many people were like, Vanessa, that's the best thing since sliced bread. Why would you do that? Why would you come out against that? Like, that's the way we've always done it. And I just dove right into that head first. And I just have dedicated, I mean, this was probably, it was 20 years ago at this point. So I just dedicated the rest of my career to early literacy best practices, and I had tons and tons of trainings and, from my district, and they did get on board, and they were very much on board after that. But anyway, that's kind of where it all started. And I started blogging about it, and it just went on, it took off. And that's kind of just been my mission. That's how the whole thing started. So thanks for asking, Joy.
Absolutely. Okay. Everyone needs to go get a copy of her book. You can get it on Amazon. There's also a Kindle version on Amazon as well. But come on, we know we love our books. So we got to have it in our hand. So go grab the book, whether Kindle or paperback. I dropped the link right there for you. And then I'm also going to drop her link, Pre-K Pages. There is a dash right there. So I put the link in the chat. Make sure you guys go follow her over on Pre-K Pages. She's also on Facebook with Pre-K Pages. Go follow her over there too. You're awesome. Thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thanks a lot.
Thanks. If you love today's episode, then you are going to love this. I want to give you a free gift in your hands. This is a copy of my book, Start Your Preschool, and I want to get it to you for free. Yes, I said for free. It is a 300-page book. It'll help you learn the step-by-step process to actually starting your local or your online preschool. Every single step that I walked myself through, as well as the thousands of women who've created their own successful preschools, have gone through the exact steps listed in this book. Not to mention, I also share 20 amazing women's stories. So you can see how not only did it work for me, but it works for amazing women just like you as well. I want to get you this free copy. Just go to freepreschoolbook.com or click the link in the description and we'll get it to you today. Again, just go to freepreschoolbook.com and we'll get it right to you.